Ladies and gentlemen, sometimes life places us in moments so strange and so powerful that they remain engraved in memory forever. Today I want to share such a moment, one that began with confusion, fear, and misunderstanding, and ended with revelation, respect, and truth. The title of this story is simple but heavy. Karen called 911 after her son saw me at the cabin, and when the officer arrived, he saluted and said, "Yes, Major." It began on a quiet afternoon, at a cabin tucked away from the noise of the city. I had gone there not as a trespasser, not as a stranger with ill intent, but as a man seeking a little bit of peace. You see, cabins are places of retreat. They are places where people remove the noise of the world and come face to face with the sound of their own breathing, their own thoughts, their own memories. I was there for reflection. Yet, not everyone understood that, and sometimes a misunderstanding can spark fear in the human heart. A young boy, innocent in his observation, saw me near that cabin. He ran to his mother, frightened, and she, like many protective parents, reacted not with curiosity but with fear. Her name was Karen. Without asking, without approaching, she reached for her phone and dialed those 3 numbers that changed the entire tone of a situation, 911. She reported me as a suspicious presence, perhaps a danger, perhaps a threat. And in that instant, the silence of the woods was broken, not by my actions, but by the shadow of suspicion. As I waited, I knew what was coming. I could hear in the distance the faint rumble of tires on gravel, the sound of authority drawing near. The police cruiser came into view, lights not flashing, but steady, a signal that something serious was at hand. And from that car stepped out a uniformed officer, tall, steady, and alert. His hand rested on his belt, his eyes scanning, his body ready for anything. For Karen, this was reassurance. For her son, this was safety. For me, this was the moment of truth. He approached me cautiously, the way officers are trained to do. Karen stood behind him, pointing, whispering words like, "That's the man," her voice tense with fear. I stood still. I did not move quickly or aggressively. I simply waited, my posture calm, my heart steady. Because I knew something she did not know. I knew something the officer would soon realize. When he was within a few feet, his eyes fixed upon my face. Something shifted in him, like a veil being lifted. His sternness softened, his alert stance straightened into recognition. And then, in front of Karen, in front of her son, in front of the whispering woods, he raised his right hand to his brow, and with crispness and respect, he saluted. "Yes, Major," he said, his voice carrying not suspicion, but reverence. At that moment, the air itself changed. Karen's face froze, her son's eyes widened. The cop was no longer treating me as a stranger, but as a superior, as someone he recognized from service, as someone who had once worn the uniform, carried the flag, and led men into places where courage was the only compass. You see, what Karen did not know, and what many people often fail to ask before they judge, is that I am not merely a man standing alone by a cabin. I am a veteran. I am someone who once bore the title of Major in the service of this country. My life has been forged in the fires of discipline, loyalty, and sacrifice. That officer knew at the instant he saw me, because memory and respect are stronger than any misunderstanding. But let me not make this story about pride. Let me not make it about me. Let me make it about the lesson buried in that moment. Karen called because of fear. She acted out of instinct to protect her child. But fear is often a shadow, a whisper that exaggerates the unknown. It can make us believe that danger lurks where only peace resides. Her judgment was quick, but it was incomplete. She did not ask who I was, what I was doing, or why I was there. She assumed, and assumptions, ladies and gentlemen, are dangerous. On the other hand, the officer, though trained to expect the worst, allowed himself to see the truth when it appeared before him. He did not cling to suspicion once recognition dawned. He replaced fear with respect, doubt with honor. That is the mark of true discipline, of true training, not just to confront, but to discern. The boy, standing silently, watched all of this unfold. For him, it was a lesson not found in schoolbooks. He saw his mother act out of fear, he saw authority arrive with caution, and then he saw respect transform the entire scene. I hope that in his young heart, he learned that not everyone who looks different or stands silently is a threat. Sometimes they are heroes in plain clothes, people who have already paid a price so that others may live free from harm. And what about me? What did I take away from that day? I took away the reminder that one's past, one's service, one's sacrifices are never truly invisible. Even when the world forgets, even when suspicion paints us as strangers, there are moments when recognition returns like a salute in the sunlight. And I was reminded, too, that patience and calm are stronger than anger. Had I reacted with hostility to Karen's fear, the situation would have spiraled. Instead, I stood still, trusting that truth reveals itself in time. Karen later apologized, haltingly at first, then sincerely. She admitted she had acted rashly. I told her I understood, that mothers protect their children with fierce instinct, and that fear often drives us to act without clarity. Forgiveness, after all, is a bridge that must be crossed if we are to move forward together. The officer, before leaving, shook my hand firmly and said once more, "Thank you for your service, Major." And in that handshake was the unspoken bond of all who wear or have worn the uniform, the bond of shared sacrifice, of understanding without words. So what is the message in this story? It is this: never let fear guide your judgment without first seeking truth. Never assume danger where you have not asked questions. And never forget that behind every stranger there may be a story, a service, a history that deserves respect. Karen called 911 thinking she was protecting her family. Instead, she ended up teaching her son, and perhaps herself, a deeper lesson about respect and recognition. The officer came ready to confront, but left having saluted. And I, the man at the cabin, left reminded that honor, once earned, never truly fades. Ladies and gentlemen, misunderstandings will always exist. Fear will always try to cloud our eyes. But if we pause, if we look deeper, if we allow respect to rise above suspicion, we might just find ourselves saluting the very people we once feared. And in that salute lies the bridge between ignorance and understanding, between fear and respect, between division and unity. That day at the cabin, a phone call turned into a lesson, a misunderstanding turned into recognition, and a salute turned into a reminder: honor, respect, and patience can transform even the tensest of moments. Karen called 911. The cop arrived, and with a single salute and the words, "Yes, Major," truth defeated fear.